Stepmother did this to her stepdaughter. She poured her hot substances. Subscribe to this YouTube channel and comment your take about this story. Sandra was only 10 years old when her mother died. Her father, Mr. James, loved her dearly, but he was a busy man. He worked day and night to provide for the family. He believed Sandra needed a mother figure, so he remarried a woman named Stella. At first, Stella acted kind, pretending to love Sandra. But the moment Mr. James left the house, her true nature appeared. Stella hated Sandra for no reason. She made her wake up before dawn to clean the house, cook food, and wash clothes while her own two children, Daniel and Kate, slept peacefully. If Sandra was slow, Stella would slap her or twist her ears until she cried. One day, Sandra was cooking in the kitchen when she mistakenly spilled some hot soup. Stella rushed in, her eyes burning with anger. "You useless girl," she shouted. Without thinking, she grabbed a kettle of hot water and poured it on Sandra's hand. Sandra screamed in pain, tears streaming down her face. Her skin burned, but Stella didn't care. "Next time, be careful," she warned. That was not the only time Stella punished Sandra with hot substances. If she broke a plate, she got scolded. If she was late in finishing chores, Stella rubbed hot pepper on her lips. Sandra suffered in silence because she was afraid. Stella had warned her never to tell her father. "If you dare tell him, I will make your life more miserable," she threatened. Sandra wanted to tell her father, but she was too scared. He was always busy, and whenever he was around, Stella acted like the perfect wife and stepmother. As the years passed, Sandra's suffering continued. She had to wear old, torn clothes while Stella's children got new ones. She ate leftover food while they ate fresh meals. At school, her classmates made fun of her because of her worn-out uniform and hungry look. But Sandra did not let the pain break her spirit. She had a dream to become somebody great in life. One evening, Sandra was washing plates when her hand, still sore from a recent burn, slipped, and a plate fell to the ground, shattering into pieces. She gasped in fear, her heart racing. Stella heard the noise and rushed to the kitchen. When she saw the broken plate, her face twisted in anger. "So you want to waste my things, and?" she shouted. Before Sandra could explain, Stella grabbed a bowl of hot pepper sauce and poured it all over her face. The sharp steam made Sandra scream louder than ever before. She rubbed her eyes, but the burning sensation only worsened. "That should teach you a lesson," Stella said, crossing her arms. Sandra curled up on the floor, crying. She thought about running away, but where would she go? Her father was the only family she had left, and she didn't want to leave him. That night, as she lay on the cold floor in the kitchen, because Stella refused to let her sleep in a proper bed, Sandra made a silent promise to herself. "I will not give up. One day, I will be free from this suffering. One day, I will make something of myself." Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Sandra's suffering only got worse. Stella seemed to enjoy punishing her. She made her wake up even earlier, sometimes before the rooster crowed. If Sandra dared to sleep a little longer, Stella would pour cold water on her and drag her out of bed. "Lazy girl," Stella would scream. "You think this is your mother's house? Get up and work." Sandra washed clothes, scrubbed the floor, cooked food, and fetched water from a faraway well. Her hands were always sore, and her feet ached, but she had no choice. If she ever complained, Stella would find a new way to make her suffer. At school, Sandra tried to focus on her studies, but it was hard. She was always tired and hungry. Stella never packed her lunch, and if she asked for food, Stella would hiss and say, "Do I look like your mother? Go and beg someone else." Despite everything, Sandra was determined to succeed. She borrowed books from her classmates and studied late at night when everyone else was asleep. Sometimes, she used a small candle because Stella refused to let her read with the house lamp. One day, the school principal made an announcement that gave Sandra hope. "There will be a special scholarship for the best student in the upcoming exams," he said. The winner will get free education up to university level. Sandra's heart raced. This was her chance. If she could win, she would finally be free from Stella's wickedness. That evening, when she got home, she wanted to study, but Stella had other plans. Go and wash all the clothes in the backyard, Stella commanded. And don't come inside until you finish. Sandra looked at the large pile of dirty clothes and sighed. She wanted to cry, but she held back her tears. She had no choice but to obey. She scrubbed and scrubbed until her fingers hurt, and by the time she finished, it was already late at night. Exhausted, she went to her small corner in the kitchen and lit a candle. Her hands were trembling, but she picked up her books and started reading. I must pass this exam, she whispered to herself. I must get out of here. She studied until the candle burned out, then she laid on the cold floor and closed her eyes, dreaming of a better life. The scholarship exam day finally arrived. Sandra walked to school with an empty stomach, but her heart was full of determination. She sat in the exam hall, gripping her pen tightly. This is my chance, she whispered to herself. She answered every question carefully, refusing to let fear take over. Days later, the results were announced. Sandra's name was at the top of the list. She had won the scholarship. When she got home, she ran to her father with the news. Papa, I won the scholarship, she cried, tears of joy streaming down her face. Mr. James was overjoyed. My daughter, I am so proud of you, he said, hugging her tightly. But Stella was furious. She had never expected Sandra to succeed. So you think you are better than my children now, she sneered. A week later, Sandra was given everything she needed to travel for her studies. When the day finally came for her to leave, Stella scoffed. Go and never come back. You are nothing without us, she said. Sandra looked at her stepmother with pity. One day, you will regret everything, she said before walking away. Years passed. Sandra studied hard, graduated with honors, and became a successful businesswoman. She owned big companies, traveled the world, and became famous. One day, she decided to visit her father. When she arrived at her childhood home, she saw Stella sitting outside, looking old and tired. Life had not been kind to her. The moment Stella saw Sandra, she forced a smile. My daughter, you have returned, she said sweetly. Sandra looked at her, remembering all the pain she had suffered. You treated me like a slave, but God lifted me, she said. I forgive you, but I will never forget what you did. She built a big house for her father and took care of him, but she left Stella to suffer in her regret. The wicked stepmother had lost everything, and Sandra had won in the end.